This story is titled, Your Room Belongs to Your Sister Now, Mom declared. I didn't argue. 6 months later, I owned their house and they followed my rules. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. All right, Reddit. Get ready because this is going to be a wild ride. I, 24 male, just became the owner of my parents' house and kicked out my entitled sister and her deadbeat husband. And yeah, it's exactly as messy as it sounds. So for context, my sister Zephyr, yes, that's actually her name, my parents were going through a hippie phase, has always been the golden child in our family. And I mean always. Like since we were kids, it was the Zephyr show 24/7 in our house. When she wanted new clothes, shopping spree, when I needed clothes. There's nothing wrong with your old ones. Her 16th birthday, huge party with like 30 friends. Mine, a cake from Walmart, and my grandma telling me I was becoming a man or whatever. When she crashed my dad's car, accidents happen, sweetie. When I got a C in biology, grounded for a month, you get the picture. So I've been living with my parents trying to save up for my own place. Been working at this warehouse job that pays decent enough but not, let me buy a house in this economy, decent. And unlike my sister, I actually pay rent. Real rent. Not like, here's $50 for the electric bill rent. Plus, I handle all my own expenses and chip in for groceries and random house repairs. Zephyr moved out at 20 to shack up with her boyfriend turned husband Maverick. I swear I'm not making these names up. This dude is the literal definition of a walking red flag. He's had like 7 different jobs in 3 years and can never keep one because apparently every boss in a 50-mile radius has it out for him, or the workplace is toxic, or whatever. Sure, bro. Anyway, I'm sitting there eating breakfast on a random Tuesday, scrolling through TikTok, when my mom drops this absolute nuke on me. Zephyr and Maverick are moving into your room this weekend. Not, hey, can we talk about something, or we have a situation? Just straight up telling me my space isn't mine anymore. Like I'm a freaking houseplant they can just move wherever. I was like, what? Why? Thinking maybe I misheard or something. My dad barely looked up from his newspaper. They lost their apartment. Landlord's fault, apparently. AKA, they didn't pay rent for months and got evicted. Shocking, I know. And where am I supposed to sleep? I asked, which seemed like a pretty reasonable question. Mom just shrugged like it was NBD. You can use the sofa in the den. It pulls out. Okay, so this pull-out sofa is literally from when Clinton was president. It has a metal bar that digs into your spine all night and makes this demonic squeaking sound whenever you breathe. Plus, the den is basically a hallway between the kitchen and the laundry room with zero privacy. People walking through at all hours while I'm trying to sleep. Cool, cool, cool. Did you even consider talking to me first? I asked, trying to keep my voice chill. Honey, Zephyr's pregnant. They need the space more than you do. And there it was. The ultimate trump card. My sister was knocked up, so once again, her needs trumped mine, even though I was the one actually paying to live there. Even though it was my room with my stuff that I bought with my money. When were you going to tell me this? I asked. Mom had the audacity to look confused. I'm telling you now. You're not telling me. You're informing me after you've already decided. Dad finally put down his newspaper. Don't make this difficult, Orion. Family helps family. Funny how that family helps family line only ever works in one direction in our house. I sat there trying to process this complete bullshit, while they continued eating and planning how to rearrange my room for my sister and her loser husband, who couldn't keep a job long enough to pay their own rent. Fine, I said, which wasn't fine at all. When are they coming? Friday, Mom said, looking relieved that I wasn't putting up more of a fight. We'll help you move your things to the den tomorrow. I just nodded and got up to leave for work. But inside my head, I was already planning how this was all going to backfire on them. Like imagine thinking you can just commandeer someone's personal space, make them sleep on a medieval torture device disguised as furniture, and expect them to keep paying rent? The audacity is actually impressive. But I didn't say any of that. I just grabbed my keys and left for my warehouse shift, letting them think they'd won. But at the same time, at that moment, I still thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was being selfish. That's how deep the golden child conditioning went. So Friday rolls around, and the invasion begins. Zephyr and Maverick show up with 2 carloads of random crap. Like, how do you get evicted but still have so much stuff? Make it make sense. And guess who had to help carry all their junk into my room? This guy. The whole time Zephyr's directing traffic like she's a damn site manager. No, the dresser goes against that wall, and be careful with that box. It has my crystals in it. Yes, she's one of those crystal girls now. Apparently, the rose quartz is helping her manifest abundance. Maybe try manifesting a job for your husband instead, sis. Speaking of Maverick, this dude spent the entire move-in supervising because his back was acting up again. Funny how his back only hurts when there's manual labor to be done, but seems fine when he's playing Call of Duty for 8 hours straight. And my stuff got crammed into 2 plastic storage bins that ended up shoved under the basement stairs next to the Christmas decorations and a vacuum cleaner that hasn't worked since 2017. I didn't even get to pack it myself. Mom did it while I was at work, which means half my stuff is probably missing now. That first night on the pull-out couch was exactly as trash as I expected. The metal bar found every pressure point in my back that I didn't know I had. Plus, I had to be up at 5 a.m. for my warehouse shift, which meant tiptoeing through the kitchen in the dark to avoid waking the princess and her frog. "How'd you sleep?" Mom asked when I got home that evening, with this fake concerned look on her face. "Like shit," I said honestly. "Language," she snapped. "You know how Zephyr feels about negativity around the baby?" "Ah yes, the baby. The size of a literal blueberry at this point, but apparently capable of hearing me say shit from across the house and through Zephyr's uterine wall. Makes total sense. I tried to suck it up though, for real. Kept paying my rent on time. Still mowed the lawn on weekends. Still fixed the Wi-Fi whenever it went down, which was like every 3 days because our router is from the Stone Age. Still took out the trash that Maverick would pile up by the door instead of walking the 15 extra steps to the can outside. Meanwhile, Zephyr and Maverick treated the place like an all-inclusive resort. Never cleaned up after themselves. Left dishes in the sink until they started growing their own ecosystem. Used up all the hot water every morning. And the food situation? Forget about it. Anything I bought for myself would mysteriously disappear overnight. "Oh, I didn't know that was yours," Zephyr would say with a mouthful of my protein bar that I literally wrote Orion's "Do Not Eat" on with a Sharpie. 2 weeks into this nightmare, I came home to find Maverick lounging on the couch, my sleeping space, BTW, wearing my favorite hoodie, the one I saved up for, the limited edition one. "Dude, that's mine," I said, trying not to lose my cool. He shrugged. "Zephyr said I could borrow it. All my stuff's still packed. It had been 2 weeks. How are your clothes still packed? Are you planning to live out of garbage bags forever?" I looked at Zephyr, who was sprawled across the love seat scrolling through her phone. "You went through my stuff?" She didn't even look up. "Relax, it's just a hoodie." God, you're so uptight. I bit my tongue so hard, I'm surprised it didn't fall off. Went to the kitchen to grab some dinner before my box of protein bars could mysteriously disappear again. That's when Mom dropped the second bomb. She sat me down and looked prepared to give me a lecture. "Orion, your father and I were thinking, here we go. Since there's more people in the house now, the bills are going up. We were hoping you could increase your contribution to help with expenses." I nearly choked on air. "You want me to pay more?" "I already pay rent." "Well, Zephyr and Maverick can't contribute right now. He's still looking for work, and she needs to focus on the baby." Focus on the baby apparently means spending 6 hours a day on TikTok, making videos about her pregnancy journey that exactly 5 people watch. So I have to pay extra because you gave away my room to them? Are they paying anything at all? Mom got that tight look on her face like when someone asks her age. Family helps family, Orion. Ah yes, the family helps family card. The get out of responsibility free card that only works for certain family members. AKA not me. So you're saying I have to subsidize them living here rent-free in my room while I sleep on a torture device and have zero privacy? Make it make sense, Mom. Don't be dramatic. It's only temporary until they get back on their feet. But I knew that people like Maverick never get back on their feet. They just find new people to support their lifestyle of professional couch warming. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not just because of the metal bar creating a new permanent divot in my spine, but because I was so pissed. I could hear Zephyr and Maverick laughing in my room, probably sitting on my bed that I paid for, while I was expected to bankroll their free ride. From my uncomfortable position in the den, I could hear them through the thin walls. "Your brother needs to chill," Maverick was saying, acting like we took his kidney instead of just his room. "He's always been like that," Zephyr replied. "So possessive over everything. Mom says he never learned to share properly." "I never learned to share?" That's rich coming from the girl who literally scratched my face when I tried to play with her Barbie dream house that one time. But sure, I'm the problem. The next morning, I found a note from Mom on the kitchen counter. "Utilities bill is $50 more this month. Can you cover it?" XOXO. No, please. No, thank you in advance. Just the expectation that I would handle it because that's what I always did. Something inside me shifted that morning. A realization that if I didn't stand up for myself now, this would be my life indefinitely, subsidizing my sister's poor life choices while being treated like an unwelcome guest in a house I was helping to pay for. So for about a month, I tried to be the bigger person. I really did. Kept my head down, went to work, came home, slept on that medieval torture device they call a sofa, and just dealt with it. I even paid the extra contribution Mom asked for because I'm a certified clown, apparently. But things kept getting worse. Zephyr's entitlement leveled up daily like she was grinding on some twisted RPG. One morning, I went to get ready for work and found my electric razor in the bathroom, clearly used and not cleaned. Her husband's nasty beard hair all over it. What the hell, Zephyr? I confronted her in the kitchen where she was making her third breakfast of the day. Mav needed to clean up for a job interview, she said with her mouth full of my cereal. That's my personal stuff. Oh my God, stop being so selfish. It's not like we damaged it. Except they did. The blade was dull AF and full of Maverick's disgusting beard hair. Cost me $40 to replace the heads. $40 I didn't have to spare because I was too busy paying for their electricity usage. Then they started having friends over. Equally unemployed losers who'd stay until 2 a.m. on weeknights when I had to be up at 5 for work. Their voices would carry through the whole house, laughing and blasting music, while I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I could legally murder them all and claim temporary insanity. When I complained, Mom said, Zephyr needs social support during her pregnancy. What about my need for sleep before operating heavy machinery? What about my social life that was non-existent now, because I was too tired to do anything after work besides collapse on Satan's pull-out couch? But the real tea started spilling when I overheard Zephyr talking to Mom in the kitchen one afternoon. I was coming in through the garage and they didn't hear me. I just don't understand why Orion has to be so difficult about everything, she was saying in that whiny voice that makes me want to punch walls. It's like he resents the baby already. He's always been jealous of you, Mom replied, and my blood straight up boiled. Ever since you were kids. Maybe he should find his own place if he's so unhappy here, Zephyr suggested, and I could practically hear the eye roll. Mav could use the den as a home office for when he starts his online business. Online business, my ass. The guy could barely operate a microwave. Let's not push it, Mom said, her voice lower. His rent helps with the mortgage. And there it was, the real reason they kept me around. I was just a walking ATM to them. Someone to help pay the bills while they catered to Zephyr and her grandiose plans for Maverick's non-existent career. I backed away before they could see me, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. All those years I thought maybe, just maybe, they actually cared about me. Nope, just my paycheck. I managed to avoid everyone for a couple days after that, picking up extra shifts at work and volunteering for overtime. Anything to not be in that house. But I couldn't avoid them forever. Then about 6 weeks after they'd moved in. As I was getting ready for work, keys in hand, Maverick came sauntering out of my old room. Still weird to think of it that way. Yo, Orion, he called, like we were buddies or something. Can I borrow your car today? Got a promising lead on a job, but it's across town. My car. The only thing I had that was truly mine. That I'd saved for 3 years to buy. My one escape from this hellhole. What happened to your car? I asked, knowing damn well they'd sold it months ago to pay bills, buy a new gaming system. It's just for today, he said, ignoring my question completely. Zephyr already told your parents it's cool. Of course she did. Because in this house, what Zephyr says goes, even when it's my property on the line. No, I said, surprising even myself with how firm it came out. His face changed from fake friendly to WTF in a second. What? I said no. You can't borrow my car. He scoffed. Dude, don't be a dick. Zephyr's pregnant. What does that have to do with you borrowing my car? If I get this job, we can start saving for the baby. Don't you care about your niece or nephew? Ah, yes, the baby card. The ultimate trump card in this twisted game. Well, I wasn't playing anymore. Your employment status is not my problem. Neither is your transportation. The answer is no. He stormed off, muttering something about me being selfish. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with texts from Mom, Dad, and Zephyr. All variations on the same theme. How could I be so heartless, so selfish, so cruel to my pregnant sister and her struggling husband? I turned my phone off and finished my shift in peace. That night, I came home to find the entire family waiting for me in the living room. An actual intervention. For me not lending my car to a man who had totaled his own by driving while high, another detail they conveniently forgot. Orion, Dad started, using his serious voice that hadn't intimidated me since I was 12. We need to talk about your attitude. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absolute audacity. My attitude? I repeated. You kick me out of my room, make me sleep on a broken sofa, charge me extra rent while they pay nothing, and you want to talk about my attitude? Mom tried to cut in with her placating voice. Now, Orion, no, I said, suddenly feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. I'm done. Here's what's going to happen. Either I get my room back, or I stop paying rent completely. The silence in the room was loud. You can't just stop paying rent, Dad said, trying to sound authoritative, but I could hear the panic underneath. Watch me. You want me to contribute? Then treat me like a person, not an ATM. Zephyr, always the drama queen, rolled her eyes so hard I'm surprised they didn't get stuck. God, you're so dramatic. We need the space more than you. Then you should pay for it, I shot back. We're family, Mom said, playing her favorite card. We help each other. Funny how that help only goes one way. Dad stood up, trying to look intimidating with his dad bod and receding hairline. As long as you live under this roof, you'll follow our rules. That's when I dropped my ultimatum. Fine, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. Then here are your options. Option 1, Zephyr and Maverick find somewhere else to live. I get my room back and I keep paying rent. Option 2, I stay, keep my current setup, but I don't pay a single cent more. Your choice. The looks on their faces were priceless. Like I'd suggested we all strip naked and dance in the front yard. You wouldn't, Mom finally said. Try me. Zephyr started the waterworks. Right on cue. I can't believe you'd put me and the baby in this position. Mav puffed up his chest like he was about to do something. Man, you need to check yourself. No, you need to get a job, I snapped back. You've been between opportunities for what, 6 months now? Dad tried to be the peacemaker. Let's all calm down. Orion, you don't mean this. I've never meant anything more in my life, I said, looking him dead in the eye. You have until tomorrow to decide. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, spent the night in my car at a Walmart parking lot. Despite the cramped space and security lights, I slept better than I had in weeks on that godforsaken pull-out couch. The next day, I called in sick to work and waited. Around noon, I got a text from Dad. We've discussed it as a family. We need your contribution to make ends meet. Zephyr and Maverick are staying. They chose wrong. See, they probably thought I'd either cave and keep paying or move out in a huff. Instead, I chose violence. Not literal violence, I'm not trying to get arrested, but the kind that hits where it hurts most, their wallets. That day, I went to the bank and opened a new account at a completely different bank. Then I moved all my money over. I canceled my automatic rent payments to my parents. But I didn't move out. Why should I be the one who moves out while my sister took my own room? Nope, I stayed right there in the house, front and center, taking up space, making my presence known. I thought you were moving out, Mom said when she saw me sprawled across the entire living room couch. Not the pull-out one, the good one, watching TV on my day off. Nope, I said, not even looking at her. I'm staying, just not paying. The look on her face was priceless, like her brain was buffering, trying to process what I just said. But you said? I said either I get my room back and keep paying rent, or I stay and don't pay. You chose option 2. We thought you'd leave. Not what I said, I replied, turning up the volume on the TV. Your assumption, not my problem. And that's when the real fun began. I decided that if I wasn't paying rent, I was going to get my money's worth in other ways. First up, climate control. Our house has always had this unspoken rule that the thermostat stays at 73 in summer. Any lower and Dad would lose his mind about the electric bill. Well, guess who wasn't worried about the electric bill anymore? This guy. I cranked that AC down to 65 degrees and kept it there. Felt like an igloo in the middle of July and it was glorious. When Dad tried to turn it back up, I'd wait until he left and turn it right back down. I also started taking long showers. Like 30-minute showers where I'd just stand there contemplating life while the hot water tank emptied. Zephyr would bang on the door screaming about how she needed to pee, pregnant bladder and all that, but I'd just turn my music up louder. The kitchen became my personal restaurant. I'd cook elaborate meals for myself using all the groceries, but only make enough for one. When Mom asked if I was sharing, I'd laugh and say, didn't buy the ingredients, didn't pay for the gas to cook it, why would I share the food? By week 2 of my rent strike, the house was starting to feel the effects. Past due notices started appearing on the counter. The Wi-Fi got shut off because the bill wasn't paid. I just switched to using data on my phone, which I still paid for myself. I was watching Zephyr and Maverick during all this. They contributed absolutely nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. But they complained the loudest about everything going wrong. The AC isn't working. It was just not as cold as Zephyr wanted, because Dad had turned it down to save money. There's no food in this house. There was. Just not the specific organic, gluten-free, non-GMO whatever that Zephyr was craving. The Wi-Fi's out again. Yes, because no one paid the bill. The more things deteriorated, the more obvious it became that they were complete parasites. They didn't clean. They didn't cook. They didn't contribute financially. They just existed, taking up space and resources like human black holes. One night, I was in the kitchen making myself a sandwich when Mom came in looking stressed. "We need to talk about the mortgage," she said quietly. "What about it?" I asked, not looking up from my sandwich construction. "We're behind. Without your contribution?" I shrugged. "Not my problem." "Orion, please. We could lose the house." "Again, not my problem. You made your choice." She slammed her hand on the counter, startling both of us. "Why are you being so selfish? Why can't you just help your family?" I finally looked up at her. I did help. For years. I paid rent. I fixed things. I mowed the lawn. I drove people around. I did everything that was asked of me without complaint. And how did you repay me? By taking away the one space that was mine and giving it to people who contribute nothing. "Zephyr is family," she insisted. "And what am I?" She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't cave. By month 2, things were getting desperate. The electricity got shut off for a full day until Dad scraped together enough to pay the minimum to get it turned back on. The water pressure mysteriously dropped, which I'm pretty sure meant they weren't paying the water bill either. The house was falling apart in other ways too. No one was cleaning anymore. I certainly wasn't going to, and Zephyr and Maverick never did in the first place. Dishes piled up in the sink. Laundry overflowed the hampers. The lawn grew so tall you could lose a small child in it. And the fighting? Non-stop. Mom and Dad argued about money constantly. Zephyr cried about how stressful everything was for the baby. Maverick complained about how he couldn't find a job in this economy while spending 8 hours a day playing video games on his phone. The utilities spiraled out of control. Every time I walked into a room, I'd turn on all the lights, the TV, maybe a space heater just for fun, then leave it all running when I walked out. Food started running low too, since no one had money to buy groceries. Mom would come home with the cheapest stuff she could find. I bought my own food and kept it in a mini fridge with a lock that I installed in the den. Worth every penny to see Maverick's face when he realized he couldn't steal my food anymore. "This is ridiculous," he complained one night at dinner. If you can call a sad bowl of instant mashed potatoes dinner. "We're living like animals while he's eating steak." He pointed at me, happily munching on a ribeye I'd grilled for myself. "Maybe you should get a job then," I suggested between bites of delicious meat. The tension was so thick you could cut it with the steak knife I was using. "I've been applying everywhere." "No, you've been playing Call of Duty and pretending to apply to jobs." "Not the same thing." He stood up, looking like he might try something stupid. Dad put a hand on his arm. "Not worth it, son," he said, which was the first time I'd ever heard him call Maverick son. That stung more than I expected. By month 3 of not paying rent, reality finally hit. Dad cornered me in the kitchen, clearly stressed, saying they were 3 months behind and the bank had started foreclosure. I leaned back, unbothered, and reminded him this mess was their own doing. He asked what it would take to fix things, hoping for some easy way out. I told him I'd take over the mortgage, but only if they signed the house over to me. They could stay, but Claire and her husband had to leave. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I told him it was either that or lose the house completely. Then I walked away. Decision was theirs. The next week was tense AF. No one really talked to anyone. Mom cried a lot. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Zephyr and Maverick seemed oblivious, still complaining about the Wi-Fi and the food and basically everything else. Then one night, Dad called a family meeting. "We've made a decision," he said, looking defeated in a way I'd never seen before. Mom was crying quietly in the corner. Zephyr looked confused, like she couldn't compute what was happening. "The bank is starting foreclosure proceedings," Dad continued. "We can't catch up on the payments." "What about my baby shower next month?" Zephyr interrupted, because of course that was her first concern. "We can't have people over if we're getting evicted." Even now it was all about her. Dad ignored her, which was a first. "Orion has offered a solution. He'll take over the house and the mortgage." "What?" Zephyr shrieked, her voice hitting a pitch that probably shattered glass somewhere. "You're giving him the house?" "We don't have a choice," Mom said through tears. And that's how I became a homeowner at 24. The paperwork took about a month to complete. Had to get a mortgage transfer, title change, all that boring legal stuff. My parents looked like they were attending their own funeral when we sat in the lawyer's office, signing everything over. Zephyr refused to even come. She was too stressed, and it wasn't good for the baby. Maverick was probably too busy applying for jobs, aka playing Fortnite. The day I got the final confirmation that the house was officially mine was one of the best days of my life. Not because I suddenly owned property at 24, though that was a nice bonus, but because for once in my life, I had power in this family dynamic. First order of business: reclaiming my room. I waited until Zephyr and Maverick were out, probably mooching free food from someone else, and moved all my stuff back in, threw their crap into garbage bags, and left them in the garage. When they came back and found me settled in my room, playing video games like nothing had changed, Zephyr lost her mind. She stormed into my room, after not knocking, of course, and started screaming about how I couldn't do this, how she was pregnant, how they needed the space, the usual BS. I just kept playing my game and waited for her to run out of steam. When she finally paused to breathe, I looked at her calmly and said, "My house, my rules. You've got 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live." The shock on her face was priceless, like she literally couldn't compute what was happening. "You can't kick out your own sister," she shrieked. "Actually, I can. It's my house now. But I'm pregnant." "Not my fault, not my problem." 2 weeks. She ran to get our parents, expecting them to fix it like they always fixed everything for her. But for once, they stayed out of it. They knew they were on thin ice themselves. Those 2 weeks were chaos. Zephyr alternated between crying, threatening, and trying to guilt me. Mav tried to act tough once, suggesting he might not leave, until I mentioned how easy it would be to call his probation officer. Yeah, that was a thing. And mention his living situation had changed. Mom tried to play mediator, but I shut that down quick. "You lost the right to have any input when you signed the house over," I told her. "This is between me and them now." Dad mostly stayed quiet. I think he was actually impressed, in a weird way. Like he never expected me to stand up for myself like this. Zephyr and Maverick spent the 2 weeks making zero effort to find a new place. They assumed I'd cave, or Mom and Dad would convince me to let them stay. They were wrong. On day 14, I changed the Wi-Fi password and turned off the hot water to the bathroom they'd been using. By evening, they were packing. They ended up moving in with Maverick's parents, who apparently weren't thrilled about the arrangement either. From what I heard later, his mom had a strict no freeloading policy and actually made Maverick get a job at the local gas station. Karma's a bitch. With Zephyr and Maverick gone, I turned my attention to my parents. I wasn't heartless enough to kick them out. They were still my parents, despite everything, but things needed to change. I called a family meeting, weird being on the other side of one of those, and laid out the new house rules. 1. They would pay me rent, less than I used to pay them, because I'm not a total asshole, but enough to establish that this was my house now. 2. We'd split utilities evenly. 3. Everyone cleans up after themselves. 4. No more family helps family BS as an excuse to take advantage of me. Mom cried, of course. Dad tried to argue about the rent amount until I reminded him that I could technically charge the market rate, which would be way more than what I was asking. The first few months under the new regime were weird AF. Mom would start to tell me to do something, then catch herself mid-sentence. Dad would grumble about how I loaded the dishwasher or mowed the lawn. I'd just remind them, my house, my rules, and they'd shut up. The power shift was obvious. They started asking permission for things they used to just do, having friends over, using the washer on certain days, etc. It was like they were walking on eggshells around me, which honestly felt pretty good after years of being treated like a second-class citizen. Zephyr still texted Mom constantly, feeding her BS about how terrible I was, how I tore the family apart, how the stress could harm the baby. Mom would try to guilt me sometimes, but I'd just show her screenshots of all the times Zephyr had treated me like garbage, and she'd back off. And yeah, the financial situation improved almost immediately. Without Zephyr and Maverick draining resources, and with my parents actually contributing, I was able to catch up on the mortgage and even start putting money aside for repairs the house needed. It was my house now, and for the first time, it actually felt like it. I could make changes without asking permission. I could have friends over without getting the third degree. I could eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without someone complaining I was using too many dishes. Dad started to come around first, surprisingly. He'd never been great at expressing emotions, but one day he awkwardly patted me on the shoulder and said, "Place looks good." Coming from him, that was practically a hallmark moment. Mom took longer. She'd been so used to controlling everything in the house that adjusting to her new position was hard. She'd still try to rearrange things I'd organized or suggest better ways to do household tasks, I'd just look at her until she remembered the new dynamic and backed off. The weirdest part was realizing how much of the family dysfunction had revolved around keeping Zephyr happy. Without her constant drama, the house was peaceful. We actually had normal conversations at dinner. No one was competing for approval. Then, about 3 months after kicking them out, Zephyr had the baby, a boy they named Phoenix, because of course they did. Mom babysits sometimes, but I made it clear they weren't welcome at my house. Too much drama, too much history. Maverick actually kept his gas station job, which shocked everyone. Turns out when you don't have enablers making excuses for you, you learn to get your shit together. Who knew? Dad asked me once if I'd ever let them move back in. Maybe when the kid's older, I said. If they learn some respect? He nodded, understanding the terms. It's weird owning the house I grew up in. Sometimes I'll be fixing something or paying a bill, and it hits me. This is mine now, all because they couldn't treat me with basic dignity. Was it extreme? Maybe. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I'm not living in Zephyr's shadow. I'm not the afterthought, the reliable one they only notice when they need something. Looking back at everything, I sometimes wonder if I could have handled things differently. But then I remember how they made me sleep on that torture device of a pull-out couch, expected me to pay more rent for less space, and then had the audacity to act surprised when I finally stood up for myself. So no, I don't regret how things turned out. Sometimes you have to burn bridges to stop people from walking all over you. And honestly, the view from this side is pretty damn good.